you can see it burns. We are at the Nikola Tesla Museum in Karlovac, Croatia, where he was in 1870 or 1870s, the real gymnasium, where Nikola Tesla, born July 10th, 1856, in Smiljan, Croatia, at the time Austro-Hungary. And about a few days late of his birthday, I was going to be here for his 168th birthday. But I'm about 4 days late. I was actually south. I was in Lika, I was in Dubrovnik and Sinj area, and so I actually passed by Smiljan. So here we show the sequences and details of Nikola Tesla and electrical shocks. Now what we wanted to do is do a little bit of Martin Sekulic and who actually he was. He was an interesting figure from Karlovac, Croatia. And why is he interesting? Because Nikola actually discovered, Martin Sekulic, the professor Martin Sekulic here in Karlovac at the time, Karlstad, in 1877, actually discovered Nikola Tesla's potential as to what he really was, and pulled him out of, technically, if you can call it, obscurity. Whereas, thanks to Martin Sekulic, Nikola Tesla actually made it later on from, as you can see, this was in Karlovac, to Maribor, Graz, which is probably other than Vienna, but really Graz is probably the center of academia of all Austro-Hungary at the time, and Prague, Budapest, Prague, Strasbourg, Paris, and the rest is history. In 1885, Nikola Tesla meets Edison's people. Maybe one might say fortunately, and one might say unfortunately, but the rest is history, where he ends up in New York City, and then from New York City to our own Colorado, where we are right now. It says here, of course, this could be paused, how he got to Maribor, from Graz, and to Prague. By the way, Nikola always loved Prague for some reason. He said that Prague was his possibly most favorite city in Europe, and it is kind of the very center of actually old Europe, being in Budapest. It wasn't really until 1881, until 1884, 1883, 1984, Orwell, but here. But unfortunately, it was Edison who introduced him to the, in a way, cold hardships of the United States. Ergo, aka dog eat dog kind of mentality, where Edison jokingly, famously, introduced him to the so-called American sense of humor. So he was in Steiermark, in Graz, in 1875, after Karlovac. So this would have been between 1870, late 1870s, where Nikola Tesla ended up. Going back to Smiljan at the time, because his father was dying, and it was a turbulent time period for Nikola Tesla, right around 1879, and yes, he had to go back, and it is where his father pretty much loosened up finally, and you know, admitted that Tesla is in fact who he is, and probably could not be a priest. No offense to priesthood, but yeah, it didn't really work for Nikola Tesla. But there we go, New York City, where we were about a month ago. Okay, so really the turning point might actually have happened really in Budapest, because in Budapest is where I kind of got introduced more towards the cosmopolitan aspect of science, which at that point really was Paris in a way, you know. And that's where he got connected with Edison's Continental Company. And later on, it got to New York, where, yeah, June 6, 1884, Nikola Tesla arrived in the new eternal city. So not the Eterna Città di Roma, Eterna Città di Roma of the modern world, which it really is New York City, I have to say. I was just there a month ago. There's nothing like New York City. It's the best place, really. But yes, and now here was a documentary, by the way, where my friend Neven Cetinjanin was actually playing a role. And this was we filmed this about a year or so ago, and I was showing Nikola Tesla arriving in Karlovac, Karlstad in 1870 as a teenager. So there we go. My friend Neven Cetinjanin, and can't remember the name of the guy who was playing young Tesla, but yeah, Neven Cetinjanin played his uncle, who was, and this was his aunt, who took him in while in Karlovac in Karlstad, and his uncle, played by Neven here, was in the Austro-Hungarian army at the time, so this would have been 1870s. So Karlstad, and I believe it was Gendarmeria, or I think something that my own great-grandfather was the chief of police or chief of Gendarmeria in Austro-Hungary, in Austro-Hungarian Empire. This was kind of like a part of the military act, not to be mistaken specifically with the MPs, military police, but similar to his uncle. My great-grandfather, Franjo Pavletic, father of Ivan Pavletic, and he married an Italian woman called my grandmother, Anna Scala. So around Trieste area, I think Pavletic comes from Istrian Peninsula. So they arrived, it was all Austro-Hungary, so they came here. But interesting thing also, my great-grandfather died from Spanish flu at the very end in World War I. So I believe at the beginning of November of 1918, before armistice, my great-grandfather passed away from Spanish flu. And yeah, so my grandfather only lived with his mother, Anna Scala, married Pavletic in Istrian dialect. But anyways, this was shot about, I believe actually it was shot more like 2 years ago here in Karlovac. We were filming the sequences from the 1870s here regarding Nikola Tesla's stay in Karlovac. But anyways, so let me just go a little bit further more. There's some other interesting factors about the, as you can see, look at that. Wow. It burns a little bit, just a little bit. Some mechanisms that I already recorded some 10 years ago. I was here in the gymnasium, actually more like 12 years ago, and I recorded some artifacts. But these were written by Martin Sekulic directly. Also interesting to note that the last actual physical diploma that Nikola ever got was right here in Karlovac, Karlstad. Everything else was kind of like, I mean, he was way beyond his time, anyways. But yeah, it was, Martin Sekler. I mean, compared to let's say Edison, who really was a cheat and a business bastard. He was. Nikola was ripped off of everything, and unfortunately, it was. If it wasn't for Martin Sekulic in 1870s, question is, would Nikola Tesla ever have gotten past, Karlovac or Graz, who knows, he maybe end up being here between Graz and Karlovac, Karlstad at the time, which primarily in Austro-Hungary. I don't think he would really leave the area. It's not enough to be it's not enough to just be a genius. You need to be discovered. It's not enough to just have the talent. You need, call it an agent, somebody who can actually promote you, market you. And I think potentiometer, yes. So the whole wave demonstrator kit. I remember recording a lot of these when I was in the gymnasium doing another documentary about 12 years ago for the movie Tesla Beyond Imagination. So freshly after I wrote the first draft of Tesla Beyond Imagination, the biography. So my first draft of my biography, Tesla Iznad Mašte in Croatian, written also both in English and Croatian, now more in English. So this would have been 2012. I did some documentaries, video, similar stuff like this regarding, but they didn't have this museum yet open back then. And but yeah, I remember recording all these pieces before all these pieces, as you hear, they were displayed here for all to see. That's right. Room-proof induction cooler. Yeah, and but yeah, so here we have Smiljan, where we were just a couple of days ago in Lika, outside of Gospic, the birthplace of Nikola, his father, Orthodox priest, who insisted for Tesla to be a priest like his father. However, because unfortunately, his older brother, Daniel, unfortunately passed away in an accident while riding a horse. So the only left living son, was Nikola, who was supposed to, so in Orthodoxy, in Greek Orthodox, Byzantine Orthodoxy, compared to Roman Catholicism, you can actually marry and have children, and it's usually a custom that the oldest son inherits the actual priesthood, and that was the plan with Nikola, which kind of worked out, but not exactly, as you all know. Nikola actually ended up having cholera, from which he almost died. But I believe, and this is kind of controversial, that it is really New York City, it's really United States of America, which made Tesla what he really is. If it wasn't for Colorado, going to Colorado Springs and doing insane experiments where the entire Colorado Springs area, including Manitou and everything, got wiped out of electricity for 24 hours or something. There was no electricity in the city and area of Colorado. Yeah, I mean, semi-stupid nationalistic controversies about, is he a Serb, is he a Croat, he's a Croat Serb, he's this, he's that. But, really, I mean, yeah, he's ethnically a Serb, and yeah, technically he was born and raised in Croatia. Really, he was an American scientist of Croatian Croatian national and ethnic Serb. I mean, technically that would really be what it was. And here we have nice air conditioning here. It's actually really, really hot outside. Okay, and then let's see, and it's showing a little bit.
Nikolu Teslu pratile su i mnoge fobije, koje su doprinosile glasu ekscentrika koji ga je pratio. Jedna od njih bili su nečista voda, to jest mikrobi i bakterije. Mahnito je prao ruke, brisao pribor i tanjure prije objeda, izbjegavao sumnjive restorane. Ovako ponašanje pojasnio je riječima: da imate mogućnost na samo nekoliko minuta pogledati ta odvratna, dlakava, ružna bića, kakva ne možete ni zamisliti, kako se međusobno trgaju dok se njihova tekućina širi.
So it's showing a little bit of his, similar to Howard Hughes. I mean, geniuses are kind of like that, but similar to Howard Hughes. He had pretty thick OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and he was obsessed with, germaphobe. He was obsessed with a lot of those stuff. So, but something very interesting about it is I call it Vedic mathematics, his photographic memory. So I just wanted to see something about the photographic memory that he...
Možemo reći da jabuka ne pada daleko od stabla. Njegov otac Milutin je mnoga dijela iz svoje bogate biblioteke znao napamet, te je tečno govorio više jezika. Strast prema knjigama i jezicima prenio je i na sina. Zarana, otkrivši ljepotu i moć knjiga,
something that...
otvorio si je mnoga vrata
photographic memory.
izumima Teslinim okupacijama, koje bismo danas možda nazvali obsesivno-kompulzivnim poremećajem.
There we go, OCD.
Na primjer, svaku knjigu, pa čak i opus, morao je pročitati od korica do korica. Ovo mu je osobito teško sjelo čitajući Voltera, autora oko 100 debelih knjižurina, kojeg nije podnosio. Naš junak bio je opsjednut i brojem 3. Taj te drugi brojevi dijeljivi s 3 upravili su njegovim navikama, postupcima i odlukama. 3 puta je morao obići gradske brojeve i korake. S 3 su morali biti dijeljivi i brojevi hotelskih soba u kojima je odsjedao. Zadnjih 10 godina života proveo je u hotelskoj sobi 3327 na 33. katu. Tesla je brojao i koliko puta je sažvankao pojedini zalogaj, te koliko ugrusa koristi. Obsesivno je brojao kako pere ruke, izračunavao volumen hrane.
So as we can see here, he was obsessed with a lot of, very similar to Howard Hughes, but
pridizao i nastavljao dalje u nove pobjede. Nikola Tesla bio je čovjek krajnosti. Njegov veliki talent s druge su strane pratile i određene mane te poroci. Kako je i sam zapisao, u mladosti ga nije zaobišla manija kockanja.
Anyways, so what we have here is certain phobias and certain things that were characteristic of his ultra high IQ, I guess. It's hard to be in that kind of different level of sphere in understanding and existence to not have certain manias, but definitely OCD was a definite aspect of his reality, which was clearly, but yes, here we have different places, cities where he was, but I think most important things, which I mention in the script, in my biography script, Tesla Beyond Imagination. What it is that there was beyond just regular, call it science. I mean, the reason I named it Beyond Imagination is because something that I also say is, if you can imagine it, you can achieve it. But imagination requires vision. Vision is more important sometimes than to physically achieve something. But in order to physically achieve something, you have to have the ability to envision something, the ability to actually have the imagination, to see the ability and a possibility of something. So, we can argue between possibility and impossibility, ability and inability, capability and incapability. But really what it comes down to is you have to have guts. Fortune favors the bold, as the old Greeks and Romans would say. You can dream it and you can do all that, but if you don't at least try to achieve it, you will never go. But interesting thing here, in Croatia, here, Austro-Hungary, as you can see right here. So this is Austro-Hungary, and we are right about here. Okay. He went from there through Europe, Paris, over the Atlantic, good old Atlantic, ended up in New York in June of 1884, and then some 15 years later, right here where I also live, in good old Colorado. And I honestly think that Colorado is probably the place where he achieved the biggest, strangest, possibly the most bizarrest findings, achievements. It's in Colorado in between 1899 and 1900 where he started writing about his controversial theory of dynamic gravity, which is really bending light. It's what also Einstein and we're talking about. Time travel, technically, really. Wormholes, bending light, bending space-time continuum. Things that are truly, some would say science fiction, I would say just science. Strange science, not fiction. It's just insane science that's so beyond our regular academic path. I think, if you take in consideration Vedics, like Vedic mathematics, it's just beyond our comprehension. We're talking, and not too much to go into the whole ancient aliens, CT, blah, 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 but in a way it is, in fact, a little bit alien. There are elements here that are beyond, not only beyond imagination, beyond explanation, fact of the matter, in 1938, right before World War II, this was after Colorado, decades already after in Colorado, but he came up with theory of dynamic gravity. Also, you have to understand, 1938 and 1939 is when, what's his name? FBI started shifting towards something we would know later on as CIA, but first it was called OSS, Office of Strategic Services. It wasn't really until actually World War II period, so after 1941, after Pearl Harbor, until the United States fully got into war, that we got into OSS, Office of Strategic Services, which later in 1948 would become to be known as CIA, where OSS operatives lived in a room right underneath Nikola Tesla's hotel room through the entire 1942 year. I know for a fact that they were there from June of 1940, so OSS operatives, they were there from June of 1942 to January 7th, 1943, when Nikola Tesla passed away. And the fact of the matter is that the OSS operatives got into his hotel room before any FBI or NYPD could actually get a hold of it, and which was an interesting paradox due to the fact that all the worthwhile documentation that was in his hotel room, I don't have to remind that Nikola Tesla was a bizarre man in his own genius way. What happened is he didn't write everything down, unfortunately. So due to the fact that he didn't write things down, that which was written down was all confiscated, and none of this documentation has ever surfaced out. Interesting paradox. So OSS knew exactly when he died. So even when FBI, and by the way, also Donald Trump was there was attempted assassination of Donald Trump. His uncle, Trump Senior, they were Germans, I believe, Schwaben, Baden-Württemberg. Trumpf was his actual name, but one of his uncles, Trump, was one of the people involved in confiscating Nikola Tesla's documentation. So, yeah, there's a lot of questions, right? During the World War II period, what exactly happened, with a lot of stuff. But an interesting factor came regarding his theory of dynamic gravity from 1938. That 2 years, or well, actually 6 to 7 months after Nikola Tesla died, and they confiscated all his paperwork, something very strange happened. I was also in the U.S. Navy, never finished, but this is about 30 years ago. But United States Navy, up to this day, denounces the Philadelphia experiment, the total, literal vanishing of an entire ship from the harbor in Philadelphia, right outside of Philadelphia, and reappearing 10 minutes into the future in a completely different place, and then vanishing again, reappearing back in Philadelphia. I mean, a very controversial happening. It did, in fact, happen. It just, as we all know, the United States of America likes to cover things up, so it's not exactly how it is. But I think at this juncture, by this point, I think you have to be a little bit of a fool to not pick up on, how the American slang would say, wake up and smell the Folgers. Here we have the gymnasium, the real gymnasium where Nikola Tesla went, his house where he lived, the flag of the county of Karlovac, not only city of Karlovac, but the county of Karlovac, and the Croatian flag. And now we're in the hotel. But yeah, so between 1856 and then 1870s here in Karlovac, aka Karlstad, and then up to pretty much World War II period, 1930s, turn of the century in Colorado, and then 1930s and 40s, and in my opinion, in some ways, late 30s and early 40s were the most obscure elements of Nikola Tesla's life actually occurred, and I believe that is when a lot of controversial questions are, and things that make science fiction more science rather than fiction, and perhaps to understand and admit that it's okay that sometimes just because we do not understand certain scientific aspects of our reality, it doesn't mean it's actually fiction. It just means it's beyond our understanding, beyond imagination, as our script project film Tesla Beyond Imagination is. But yeah, I hope I shed some more light on Nikola Tesla's life all over, altogether, and I wish to, so we're here in the cafeteria, and I wish, some more insights of this. Hopefully we can start filming and shooting our project, Tesla Beyond Imagination, which has already gone into in development into pre-production stage multiple times, and perhaps the closest where it ever gotten was right around 2019, 2020, right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic actually destroyed everything. It did, the entire planetary destruction of all business. But anyways, I don't give up. I never give up. I will not give up, and I believe that we will actually get to the point of filming and finally getting our filming project in full reality sooner than later. And we already had Daniel Brühl, the German actor Daniel Brühl, almost attached. We talked to him. We had the Australian Croatian actor Eric Bana, Banadinovic Eric Bana, also communicated with his agent. But yeah, it is definitely in development / in production. So hopefully our project will get there. Okay, I will.